Yeah.
We are ready. I am calling this meeting to order of the Salton Sea, special meeting, the Salton Sea Authority here on Thursday, February 19th at 10:10 a.m. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Ms. Moreo next to me.
Please place your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I am now calling for roll call. Ms. Lisa,
President Dockstader,
present.
Vice President Estrada,
Here.
Secretary Singh, Treasurer Morales,
Here.
ex officio Joe Shea,
Here.
Director Murillo.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. And I do believe there may be a few members on their way. Oh, can we maybe ask if Ryan Kelly's here?
Sure.
He's just not on camera yet. Thank you. At this moment in time, I'm opening up to, oh, are there changes to the agenda?
Not aware of any, Madam President.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Do I need to approve the agenda?
I'll make motion to you.
Pardon?
I'll make motion to approve the agenda.
It has been, a motion to approve the agenda. Mr. Morales, can I have a second? I will second. Been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. We don't need a roll call, do we? We don't have anybody online, Lisa?
Not anybody that's eligible.
Pardon?
Director Singh is online, but she was not.
Oh, beg your pardon. Okay, so do we need to roll call the vote then? Do not. Okay, perfect. Moving on to public comments. Do we have any public comments?
Public wants to speak. If there's any member of the public wanting to speak, please raise your hand. There are none.
None at all? All right. Moving on to consent calendar. Before I have a motion to approve the consent calendar, I would like to discuss on the register Western Growers. We pay $400 for a subscription.
It's a dues.
A dues, yeah, a dues to Western Growers. Is that my only question is that beneficial?
I think so, Madam. Relative modest investment in cases. Connected to the agricultural community. It is something we're trying out, but I said a relatively small investment. We made some adjustments in that regard. We eliminated some other membership dues that we were paying that were considerably more than that, and we still have $100 before it.
Okay, and thank you. I appreciate that. I recently did a video for them, so I will reach back out and suggest that maybe they do some, they're doing kind of a public outreach right now. So I'll suggest they do something for SSA. So I just wanted to clarification. Thank you. Does anybody else have any other comments regarding the consent calendar? Somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. Second.
It's been made, a motion has been made and seconded. Do we need a roll call vote since, no, okay. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
I don't know if there was any board member comment. Did you call board member comment?
I did.
Okay.
Did anybody else?
No,
Yeah,
my apologies.
I know it's okay. Moving on to authorize the distribution of comment letter for the draft post 2026 Colorado operational guidelines. sure everybody's had a chance to read it. Fascinating. Does anybody have any comments before I get to mine?
Okay.
Pat, have a comment?
ETA.
Should,
The acoustics in here are not fabulous.
No.
I'm sorry.
I thought I had heard that we were gonna cut it, so we already went to public comment?
We have,
Okay.
You can, okay, I just can't hear my fellow board members. Apologize.
Madam President, we do have, Lisa Moore is online.
Okay.
And, you know, at the direction of the board at our last meeting, we took the, comments from the board and in reviewing the EIS specifically as it relates to the Salton Sea. We drafted the comments that are, before you for consideration, and I thought it might be useful for her to just kind of outline her, approach to the letter, and a little bit contextually about what it's for.
Okay.
And I think she's online. And
You should be able to see me. Can you hear me?
yes.
I can see you. Good morning, directors. Yeah, so in your comment packet, you'll find the comment letter that I drafted with Patrick. As you probably all know by now, the EIS or draft EIS for Colorado River post 2026 takes kind of an interesting approach to the Salton Sea. Not unlike past NEPA documents, it does not do an evaluation really on what the proposed alternatives for those guidelines, what the impact will be on our region and on the Salton Sea. It did something a little different than I've seen in the past. First, it said that even if reclamation adopts the proposed alternative that would have the most significant impact on our region in terms of reduced inflows, the impacts from those reduced inflows will be addressed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Salton Sea feasibility study. So on the one hand, when the board directed this line of work way back in 2020 during the first Trump administration to pursue the Army Corps of Engineers expertise and funding to help to address long-range impacts to the Salton Sea from reduced Colorado River inflows and drought. Really, the idea behind that at the time from the board was to be ready for this moment of 2026 Colorado River, right? Understanding that having a federal vehicle that could receive investment, address impacts was critical. And in the intervening years, we've spent a lot of time. We brought the state on board in 2022 as a joint local sponsor. The state has advanced all of its funding for the study. Patrick and I and other consultants spent a fair bit of time working with the Corps to get to a tentatively selected plan. So having reclamation identify this as an important piece of the Colorado River puzzle is something that, we sort of acknowledge in the comments. We go beyond that to say the acknowledgement is welcome. There are additional things that really will be required to ensure that the feasibility fulfills that vision. One is to fully fund the Corps of Engineers' role in the feasibility study and to, if at all possible, to try to accelerate the completion of the feasibility study so that we can get to implementable projects, which is really what's key to everyone, I think, on the board and in the community. The second piece in the draft EIS, they essentially say we really don't have any authorities to address the impacts at the sea, and so we address that by identifying the federal government's responsibilities at the sea. They are a major landowner to the tune of roughly 40% of the lands in and around the sea. They have tribal trust responsibilities to the Torres Martinez. They have a national wildlife refuge. So just pointing out, these are the federal interests that really drove our engagement at the federal level to secure the support from Congress and the Corps of Engineers to to engage in this work. And so that's where we focus the comments based on the direction I received from Patrick. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
And if I might, Madam President, I would like to personally recognize Ms. Moore and the time that she spent in drafting this document. She did the comment letter for the previous SEIS, and it was an extensive body of work, but the laws and the executive orders all have changed, so she had to go back and research and compile all of that. And so I just want to express my personal appreciation for all the work that has gone into the drafting of this document for the benefit of the authority and all of its member agencies.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
Sure.
Does anybody have any comments on the letter itself? Anything?
Yeah, Madam President, I
Yes.
have a few comments. I just want to share that we did circulate this letter before us here. This exact letter within our board. It was also shared with our attorneys for the purpose of trying to ensure that the agency didn't feel that there was any conflicts in the letter as we are kind of working through these guidelines for the Colorado River. And so I'm happy to say that there was no concerns that were identified. And I also just wanted to comment that I think that it's a good strategy. I think the one that we're laying out here in this letter, I think at least the way I understand it, the bulk of the letter and the purpose of the letter, not just from the authority, but it also seems that it's what the Bureau is suggesting in the draft, is that they're relying on the feasibility study to kind of address the issues of the mitigation that's going to be required as part of the impacts that the new guidelines might have on the Salton Sea. And so I think that our proposal here to try to ensure that the draft aligns our policy, that we're all in agreement and we all point to the feasibility study as being an important piece that is yet to be completed, and kind of gets all the agencies pointing at that as something that needs to be complete, something that needs to be funded. I think that's great. I don't think it takes away from anybody, but it certainly does create a path forward in our effort to ensure that feasibility is complete and that we have all the funding and all the help that we can get from all the other federal agencies that might have to play a role in this. So I think it's a good strategy, and those are my comments.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any other comments?
On the section that mentions Torres Martinez, I'm glad that the language in there mentions the fact that they have a trust responsibility to the tribe to protect our lands and protect trust lands, because that's an obligation that the federal government has to us. And being a part of Salton Sea Authority, I'm glad that we have that language in the letter, because I think it adds another layer of obligations that the feds have to do in order to help us try to accomplish what we're trying to do at the Salton Sea. And I'm glad that, again, like Still said, we're still pointing back to the feasibility study because we need that funded and finalized before we can figure out what the game be.
Excellent. Anybody else?
Yeah, that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
So, on page 3, when we have I guess point number 1, point number 2, these are points I want to get across, or ask, if you will. And to what degree would these actually be acknowledged by folks out in the Colorado River, or even for that matter, you have to know at state level where the governor's office in Wayne, for example, to what degree are they understanding what's going on here, you know? And I guess my ultimate question is this: do we actually think that point number 1 and 2, which makes sense to me, makes sense to the folks that are out there making these decisions on our behalf when it comes to the Salton Sea. And I guess that question is anybody would like to answer.
Just a clarifying question. Point number one, I'm just trying to find the text on page 3. Got it. Okay.
So I had a pretty hard time hearing, but
Okay, good.
but I think that the supervisor was highlighting the specific commitments that we're asking for on page 3, and we have 2 items listed there, and there was a proposal to perhaps add a third.
No,
Bullet
I'm
item?
asking to what degree are those number 1 and number 2 actually feasible?
Yeah.
Or actually, folks are actually gonna take a real good look at it and actually see it as valuable and actually think it's real. And they're gonna be cooperative, it's maybe a Hail Mary here, but I'm just trying to.
Yep.
To what degree?
I can-
Know
Yeah, and I can,
Yes.
sorry, thank you for, I couldn't quite hear. So 2 things. So in terms of full funding for the feasibility study, I think, quite feasible. So from the Inflation Reduction Act, $4 billion Colorado River Fund, $3 billion of that has been spent. There is $1 billion remaining in that legislation, which the authority worked on back in 2022. There is a section that authorizes reclamation to provide funding in this manner. The general, Patrick was back doing meetings on the Hill now a few weeks ago, and there is the general understanding that there may be a Colorado River package to expend that $1 billion that reclamation would put together. And so those recommendations are likely to come from the state of California, the states in the basin. And so I think, one piece of this is to, and we've talked to the state about that, to be part of that request from the state of California that from that $1 billion, we would fully fund the remainder of this study federally. And, given that reclamation is relying on it in the draft EIS, given that the IRA complies with the requirements of the underlying funding source, I think that if the governor were to include that in California's ask, we'd stand a pretty good chance of accomplishing that. With respect to the policy changes that will help to ensure that the feasibility study can in fact address things like the Department of the Interior's own Clean Air Act liability, its responsibilities to the tribe, and so forth. Those are changes that we're pursuing in the Water Resources Development Act. So we've already made those requests to the House and Senate for the 2026 WRDA bill. But it will be important really for Interior and the Corps to, once we get to a tentatively selected plan in the core feasibility study, we're going to really need reclamation because of their land ownership status, to be more closely engaged with us in the process. I hope that answered your question.
I also think that what Lisa pointed out earlier is important as well. The state needs to include this in their Colorado River ask. So it needs to be part of the overall request coming from the state of California. This is so modest, so small in comparison to the totality of it, and what it addresses is so significant that I can't comprehend this not getting done. So the likelihood of success, I think it's spectacular, but it's not going to happen unless everybody buys into it, says it's what makes sense. It's a reasonable request for, the impacts that are being experienced locally. But what it should do is set up a long-term plan for the revitalization of the region with the implementation of this feasibility study. Joe, I don't know if you have anything.
So before you answer, I guess that takes me to my second question, which is I agree with you, Patrick. So to what degree is the state of California gonna actually do exactly what we're asking in the sense of pushing the agenda and making sure that we get there? Because I'm hoping that they're just stand by. Right, so just wanna get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I would just say these are still very live, very so live that the mic is jumping all over the place. But as everyone here knows, the discussions around the Colorado River are extremely live and extremely active. But one point of consistency from the state's perspective, and this goes even beyond Colorado, is Salton Sea has dominated our federal advocacy from the state, and it will continue to do so. So that's not changing. And as these conversations, continue from the state of California's perspective, we are going to continue to prioritize the Salton Sea. The work that we're collaborating with the Army Corps on, as Lisa mentioned and as Patrick mentioned, I think has been a really positive partnership. There's a lot of work left to do there, but I really think the momentum that's being generated is going to put us in a really strong position for future restoration work at the Salton Sea.
Can I just ask a question about that, Joe, just to sort of understand, because I've talked to the Hill a little bit about that, and there's sort of their perspective has been, the governor needs to include it in that request, and that's really, it's important to get us outside of this annual funding process. We've been successful in it. The authority, materialized the next slug of cash in the FY26 appropriations process. Having said that, every now and then we don't pass appropriations bills, and so it is really important. I just wanted to kind of get a sense of, like, when you're back here, what does that advocacy in the context of Colorado River look like? Are you asking for something other than the full funding of the study? Is that something that is yet in the ask that you're making in the context of Colorado River? Just to try to get a sense to see that we're actually kind of coordinated in that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are coordinated. I mean, again, like these conversations are, they're extremely dynamic and happening in real time. And so again, like from our perspective, we're continuing to put Salton Sea at the top of our prioritization list. And so we're going to, continue to do that, and totally appreciate, what this comment letter is trying to do in terms of taking, just a snapshot of where we're at right now. But as you know, Lisa, the EIS mentions the feasibility study. We've been working really closely with the Corps on trying to understand their needs. From the state's perspective, we've front-loaded the money that we've invested into this effort, and we've been really strongly advocating at the federal level in partnership with you and Patrick, to try to make sure that the Army Corps is fully funded to continue in partnership with us. And so, as these conversations continue, and get refined and develop and move forward, we're gonna again continue inserting Salton Sea at the top of our list and work to get something done that preserves, I think, what we all want to see, and that's the momentum that we've been able to generate for this feasibility study and ultimately see it through. And I had one comment, but I don't want to, it's a small one on the letter. So if there's anything else on this topic, I'm happy to keep talking about it, but I just had another one.
I guess I just wanted clarification on, you mentioned that there's about $1 billion left on the Reduction Inflation Act monies, and that this was such a minute ask in comparison to what those dollars are meant to be used for. And so when we ask and we're saying, we would like to get commitments on fully funding the feasibility study, what is that number? Is that 10 million, 5 million? What's that?
4 million.
4 million. So yeah, I mean, 4 million out of a $1 billion plus pot is
right.
So small. And
We requested from the Assistant Secretary approximately $7 million, and that would cover the remainder of the feasibility study cost. Plus, it would allow us resources for local implementation, some of the things we talked about this morning. engaging the community, educating people, other things that need to be done to make sure that as we bring people along with the tentatively selected plan, they understand what it is, how we got there, why it's better than other alternatives available. And those are all going to take resources.
Yeah.
We work with the state to secure that. We also believe there's a role for the federal government to play in addressing those costs as well.
And just to make clear why that's so important, I mean, it's important in and of itself, but it is important in addition, because once the feasibility study moves to a chief's report, that then comes back to Congress, and we need to demonstrate, very strong constituency support to get it authorized and then to get appropriations to actually implement the study. And so that is sort of, as we're moving towards and closer to a tentatively selected plan and a chief's report, we have to make sure that we have that type of robust backup demanding, right, to actually authorize it and to get funding in to implement it. So that is really critical to how the kind of next phase of this work unfolds.
I guess my last point is, before you have a question, Joy. Maybe not exactly what you said, but is there anything in writing? Is the governor or the department at state level willing to put something together that indicates we're working together, we're cooperating with one another? We support this effort in order for us to advance this. I think that would be very helpful. And I also would like to ask, quite frankly, Peer Irrigation District, what's your next step? Because either, right, you see what's going on here, and we need all the help we can get, all the support we can have. And if you're willing to be at the table, then that's great, let's do it. And I think your voice is important. And I'd like for you, maybe if possible, to take this back to your team, right, to your colleagues, and let them know, look, maybe we need to take another look at this, or maybe not. I just want clarity on that, because we need to make sure we're all on the same page here.
Well, we definitely support the feasibility study. We will do everything that we can do, need to do. We will advocate regardless whether we're part of Salton Sea Authority or not, because we are committed to the Salton Sea. So definitely anything we can do, going to DC next week, any advocating we can do, we are more than happy to do that.
Joe, are you gonna take this message back home?
You know it. I would just say, I just want to make sure that we're not articulating what's happening now is that there's $1 billion out there, and all we have to do is pull a $4 million lever, and that's all. I just want to make sure that that's not the conversation that we're having, because I keep saying the conversations are dynamic, and they truly are, right? There's all these states, and there's less water. Continually have to do more with less year over year. These are incredibly nuanced discussions, changing, very, or just kind of a lot of dynamism in the context of these conversations. But again, with the ebb and flow of how those conversations are going, Salton Sea, top of our priority list. That's not changing anytime soon. And it's about a heck of a lot more than, $4 million or just one specific federal avenue that we're advocating for. We're trying to get this full feasibility study, implemented. And I think Salton Sea Authority has been really, really great at keeping the momentum going and continuing to be a creative thinker and partner with the Corps. And so that's where, again, we want to continue teaming up. I don't know how much more on record we can be from the state's perspective in terms of like how supportive we are, how much we all believe in this process. But if there's anything even more that we can do, happy to have that discussion. I would just also say we're having a community engagement committee meeting with members of the community in the Salton Sea region tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. we're bringing the Army Corps to talk about the process and what it means for the community and how we want folks to be bought in early, because that's going to shape final work product. And we also held 2 public meetings with the Army Corps, one in Raleigh and one in Coachella back in December, and probably got about 100 folks collectively in the Salton Sea region FaceTime with high-level Army Corps decision makers who are actively advancing this project. And so, you know, we want to continue to do all of that. Like we're pedal to the metal on making sure that we get this done.
And when Joe says we are having a meeting tomorrow morning, of course, he means the joint local sponsors are having a meeting, not the state. We've been working, and Yvonne would remind me of that if she's here. This has been a joint effort between the state and the Salton Sea Authority since its very inception, and we've been working very closely and very intentionally together. And I would also just add this, recognizing that there's a myriad of interests on the Colorado River. Salton Sea is the only one that the Salton Sea Authority is focused on. So all of the other interests are going to compete for their needs, and ours is prescient to us. And so when we're asking for that $7 million lever of the $1 billion pot, we're very serious in our request because we think it's minuscule compared to the order of magnitude of the challenges that we face here. Through the work of the Salton Sea Authority and its member agencies, we've created a tool for the state and the federal government to address these concerns for generations. And for $7 million, we can put this in place to address the uncertainties of the future for years to come. So I understand that there's a lot of negotiations going on, but there's only one that the Salton Sea Authority is focused on, and that's the Salton.
Yeah, and if I could just to sort of, and this is not, you know, this is sort of what I do day to day, and I mean, the state has been an incredible partner since they came on board with the feasibility study in 2022. Just for clarity for the directors, when I talk to offices about these comments, Salton Sea, how they're impacted, the core feasibility study, right? The instruction that I receive back is that there is likely to be a package for that $1 billion. It will likely be that each state will put together a request. That, of course, doesn't mean, right, that Reclamation will grant that request, right? We understand that, but that there will be a request. There may be additional requests for funds, right? So you're going to have some resolution to the question of what alternative is adopted on the river. As a result of this, there's likely to be federal legislation associated with that. That could bring additional dollars, or it could just be that we're going to carve up the billion. The reason why I'm just sort of stating this and just to try to answer the director's questions is the way it has been described to me in terms of what the process will be within Reclamation for dividing up that $1 billion. Understanding there's a lot of different interests in things, but that what I've been directed to do is, you know, by the Hill is to say it really needs to be in the state's request associated with the Colorado River. Understanding that doesn't mean we're pulling a lever and it's going to necessarily happen. It is a required step though to ensuring it happen. That's what I'm being told. Just for full transparency and why I bring it up and to sort of answer your questions. And I might be a little bit kind of having those conversations more directly than Joe is, but that's what that's what Patrick and I have both been told.
Thank you, Lisa.
Sure.
Does anybody else have any more comments before Joe gives his?
It's going to be kind of
a little tiny.
Yeah, just a little
Yeah.
bit. I was just gonna see if in finalizing the letter, we could just be really clear on the distinction when we use the word mitigation versus restoration, because mitigation in a regulatory context implies all of these things. And I think there's a reference at the end of the letter that I'm guessing is a reference, to the 2,000 acres we put online of shallow water habitat this year at SCH. That's a restoration project. It's not a mitigation project. I think it says it's a mitigation. So those sorts of things I feel like would be well interpreted by our federal counterparts.
Yeah, I appreciate
I understand. That's a good point. And I'll read it based on the call we just had with the Corps, Joe. I'll just read it through again for that to make sure that I'm not using that word. We can explain why, but it's better in core land if we don't use the word mitigation. If I hear you right, is that what you're sort of based on the call we just had?
I don't know if it's, I don't know about better, it's factual. So I would say like, let's call it what it is. And
Okay. Well, it's up to the directors, but that makes sense to me. If it makes sense to Patrick.
Better.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else before I start my comments? I have 4. So, just, at the very beginning of the first page, the second sentence where it says the Salton Sea Authority is joint powers agency established under California law to promote the revitalization of the Salton Sea and surrounding communities. While that sounds fabulous, technically, I'm not quite sure that's quite accurate because the JPA says that the agreement established states it was, quote, to develop programs to ensure the continued beneficial uses of the Salton Sea, including its primary purpose as a depositor for agricultural drainage, stormwater, and wastewater flows, together with protection of endangered species, fisheries, waterfowl, and recreation. So I'm bringing that to light, that it's not exactly accurate. So that's my first comment. And I'm going to move down to, the next page. Well, not the next page, page 3, towards the very, very bottom, where it says there will be a total increase of 105,000 acres of the Salton Sea playa exposed relative to 2003. The transfer modeling was really about 75,000 acres by 2042. So it's a little bit, it's an increase by about 40%. So I just want to make sure we're accurate in what we send.
Yep. Okay. Is it possible for you to sort of send these, or I'm sorry, I'm just
Yes,
that
I
would be
will.
great.
And
I think just on the first comment, that language I think was language that we've sort of used in the past in like on our website just to try to be colloquial about what the basic goal is of the authority. But that's where we've
I
used
just
that
maybe would
together.
change the sentence a little bit to fit. So anyway,
Sure.
it's just my 2 cents. And then, yeah, to go back and look again at that 105,000 acres, where really it should maybe be more like 75,000 acres.
Okay.
So, and then I'm moving on to, took this an interest, moving on to page, trying to look, 7, where, the authority undertook this work to ensure there'd be a federal project and funding vehicle to advance the mitigation necessary to protect the Salton Sea communities with the anticipated conservation measures that would likely be required by reclamation post 2026. I appreciate that, and I think that is where we're at now. But I think in the beginning, when the SSA was looking at getting the feasibility study, I don't know that this was necessarily on the radar. So again, I know I'm being nitpicky. I just think it's a little bit of wording there.
Yeah, it just to be, I mean, not to be argumentative, but it was actually it was the at the time on the board it was the intention and somewhat of a reaction to the inability in the context of DCP to mobilize money because there wasn't really a very good understanding of what we were asking for, and the vehicle had not yet been created. So it was a process of going. I actually and Patrick met with Congressman Ruiz, who said that we don't want to end up in that situation in 2026. And so he was the original actual author of the 2020 word of legislation, and that was sort of the impetus at the time on the board of it.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. I just thought it was basically, more exposure of the playa. I didn't realize it was in that conjunction with post 2026, which I realize it is now, but thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
One more. And it had to do with the of the mitigation. So to clarify, which was on board with Joe's comments to date, approximately 10,000 acres of Salton Sea. So 10,000 acres of Salton Sea projects have been implemented or in active construction. So 2,884 acres are under IED's SSAQMP and 4,992 acres under the state's SMP. Anyway, so I just, along with Joe, wanted to correct that number. So I don't know if you say mitigation or if you know, restoration. If you want to make the distinction between the two and add both numbers in perhaps to make the letter sound better. So
if you could send those to Patrick, he'll send them on to me.
I will do that. So, and thank you for your work on this, Lisa.
Sure.
And Patrick as well.
Yeah. Thank you for your feedback.
You're welcome. Are there any other comments, Strata?
I just want to say that I don't have any particular issues with your comments. They sounded fair, and you're pointing out what you believe is accurate information. And the only one that which should be easy to answer is, I think it was your second comment on the estimated exposure. And that seems to have a footnote there, number 12, where it's taking it straight out of a report.
Yeah.
And so I think that, that one should be fairly easy also to fix if in fact that's what the report says.
Yeah, I think it was the latest information we had available. There may be more current information.
Okay.
And to the extent that we can correct that, we would want to do that.
Yeah, so if there's another report that you have to reference because this report's outdated, then you should get a copy of that report, because this information is coming from that.
Yeah.
It's
coming from, if there's if there's something I can cite there for that number.
Yeah,
I believe I was.
So footnote number 12, and so, there might be a newer report that has numbers that the Madam Chair just referenced, so make sure you reference the right report.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have any new reports. So if there is one that is associated with the director's number, then that would be great to substitute in so I can footnote it.
Okay. Thank you. And I will submit these comments so that you have them.
We do have one member of the public.
Oh. Okay, one member of the public. Who's my member?
Tom.
Oh, Tom. How are you, Tom? You're on.
Good. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Tom Sefton, Brawley resident. I do want to note that if the future water cutbacks under the new management scheme do in fact result in a reduction of inflow to the Salton Sea of the down to 783,000, which was noted in the draft EIS that is available for folks to look at, that will result in playa exposure and lower elevation of the Salton Sea and increased salinity over and above what is already predictable from QSA transfers that have been in effect for 20 years. And for example, the amount of playa exposure would be on the order of 10,000 acres over and above the 75,000 that Gina Dockstetter noted. So I hope that I don't have as a member of the public, I don't get to read the letter that you're going to vote on, but I hope that in some way that additional impact is going to be noted, and we can all hope and pray that several years down the road, the feasibility study under the Army Corps decides that something is feasible and decides to pay for whatever they decide is feasible. But those impacts are going to start as soon as the water cutbacks start, which could be as early as next year. And we are going to see playa exposures going faster than we would otherwise have, meaning more potential impacts to the public health of the people living around the Salton Sea. So I hope that is somehow noted in the letter that you folks are going to vote on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Anybody else? Any other member of the public?
Not at this time.
Well, would we like to vote on this? Do we want to make a motion?
Does this require a vote, but with the amendments or the changes?
Well, probably will depend on the motion, so I will make the motion to approve with the amendments taken and some due diligence done, and I trust Patrick and Lisa to get it done, so we don't have to come back real quick for a special another meeting. But I would appreciate a copy of the letter sent out also one more time with the
Absolutely.
okay. So that's my long, very long motion.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded.
Madam President,
Yes,
I would offer an amendment to the motion. I would ask that the final conveyance be shared by correspondence with Colorado River Board and the California Department of Natural Resources. Outside of the document filing your reclamation.
Noted.
that is a great idea. I amend my motion to include that so I don't have to restate. Good luck, Lisa. You can rewind that later.
Yeah.
Oh, I got it. Yeah. No problem.
Okay, do I need to do a roll call vote or no? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. So much for a quick meeting, getting out of here at 11. So sorry. Moving on.
So the second agenda item, Madam President, the last and final agenda item for today's business will actually be very brief. At our last meeting, we talked about addressing the remaining funds under Prop 6 for the North Lake Pilot Demonstration Project. The state is anxious to include that in the scope of work for the development of their North Lake Wetlands Project, and we're wanting to facilitate that. But at the same time, and we want to do it on a collaborative basis. We both agree we want to do it on a collaborative basis, which is going to require resources and commitments on the part of the authority to do that. The original bond had funding in there for the authority to address the grant and the implementation of the grant. And what we have been doing is discussing recognizing the scope and scale of work that we have to deal with on the feasibility study, the integration of the North Lake Wetlands Project into the feasibility study and other things that we need to do collaboratively. What I did is I went back to the original MOU that we drafted, signed under President Estrada's tenure of the Salton Sea Authority in 2020, and suggested some changes to that MOU, reflecting on the work that Supervisor Perez did when he was in the assembly under AB 71 and crafted it a more of an omnibus term sheet, recognizing it was ambitious, but presented it to CNRA. And we are in discussions on how to implement the MOU generally, but specific to the North Lake project. In the interest of time, I think we're going to have to segment some of this work. And Joe and I have talked, and he believes that we will bring something back maybe next month, but no later than the end of the fiscal year to operationalize those funds for the North Lake project. So there's no action required. I just wanted to report that and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so we're not taking any action. Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody thoughts, feelings they need to get out? No? Joe, you're good down there?
I was just gonna say, yeah, so I think the authority's term sheet, appreciative of the collaboration to kind of advance that towards us. Just from a kind of nuanced perspective, the funding that is requested by the authority to be retained, I think from just my perspective, seems very reasonable in terms of implementing it and navigating the restrictions on the funding and the mechanism to preserve that funding for the authority. It's a little bit dense and involves some kind of administrative untangling that I'm working on with our team with the state. So we need a little bit more time to kind of figure out how we can do that. But we're committed to finding a way, and I'll keep the board updated as we kind of learn more about what we can do there.
Thank you.
What and I think Supervisor Kelly wants to make a comment. So I just want to call on him.
I bet he
Yeah.
does. Let's hear it.
Joe, just looking at you made me remember the Lithium Valley Commission and how some of your counterparts or people that are no longer with the state called to try and rein in what was happening. And I wish you luck with the Conservancy. Hey, you asked.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so I thought it might be on topic. It's off topic. That's okay too. And yeah, we'll have a more substantive update, I think, for our next meeting, which I'm not sure when that is, but I'll be here and I'll have an update.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Madam President, before we adjourn, I want to recognize Mr. Enrique Arroyo in our audience. And I know that he conducted an event last night. And that event, there's going to be another event tonight relating to some work they're doing on the state park. And I don't know if he wanted to share a few words with the board to provide an update on that.
I hope he does.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Patrick. Last night we had a very robust about 40 member attendees at Bombay Beach Community Center, and great discussions on the Salton Sea State Recreation Area General Plan that we're embarking on. Workshop number 1 was last night. Workshop number 2 is tonight at the North Shore Yacht Club, 6 to 7:30. I hope everybody can make it. It's an opportunity for us to engage with our community and our public visitors. March 11th is for stakeholders, and that's going to be at the Mecca Boys and Girls Club. 10 to noon. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Enrique. And I did see about 10 people camping out on 111 today on my drive out here. And two guys were running. I don't know where they were doing, but they were running. So. All right. Does anybody else have any comments? Questions? Save the sea. There's no other further comments, then I adjourn this meeting.